They're reading Michael's will in 20 minutes, but you're not invited. This is a family matter." Christine's words still echo in my head as I sit alone in my car outside the Whitmore Estate, watching through iron gates as luxury cars pull into the circular driveway. The October rain beats against my windshield, blurring my view of the sprawling Greenwich mansion where I'm apparently no longer welcome. Just 3 weeks ago, my husband's sudden death turned my world upside down. Now his family wants to erase me from his memory entirely. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Sarah Collins. Well, Sarah Whitmore for the past 7 years, though apparently that name means nothing to the people gathering inside that house. As I watch Patricia, my mother-in-law, greet guests at the door wearing the pearl necklace Michael gave her last Christmas, my mind drifts back to happier times before everything fell apart. Michael and I met at Yale Medical School. He was the golden boy from Greenwich old money, destined to become the renowned cardiologist his family expected. I was the scholarship student from Boston, daughter of a high school teacher and a firefighter, determined to become a pediatric surgeon. We were paired together for an anatomy lab, and I'll never forget how he fumbled with his scalpel that first day, his usually steady surgeon's hands shaking with nerves. "I'm better with living hearts," he'd joked, his green eyes crinkling at the corners in that way that made my stomach flutter. Our love story wasn't supposed to happen. The Whitmores had been grooming Victoria Sterling, daughter of their country, club friends, to be Michael's perfect match. She had the right pedigree, the right last name, the right everything. I had passion, drive, and a stubborn streak that matched Michael's own hidden rebellious nature. When he chose me, really chose me, standing up to his family's disapproval at a charity gala where he introduced me as the woman he loved, I thought we could overcome anything. We married in a small ceremony in Ashford, much to his family's dismay. They wanted the Plaza Hotel. We chose a converted barn with fairy lights and wildflowers. Patricia wore black to our wedding. She claimed it was navy in the dim light, but we all knew better. Richard, Michael's father, gave a toast that felt more like a eulogy for his son's potential than a celebration of our union. Christine, always her mother's daughter, spent the entire reception updating her social media with pictures that conveniently cropped me out. But David, Michael's younger brother, was different. He pulled me aside during the father-daughter dance. I shared with my dad and whispered, "Welcome to the family circus, Sarah. At least now I'm not the only black sheep." He'd been disowned 2 years earlier for choosing art school over law school, though he still showed up to family functions to stir the pot. For 7 years, I navigated the treacherous waters of being a Whitmore wife who didn't quite fit the mold. While Patricia hosted charity luncheons and Christine managed her lifestyle blog about being a Connecticut socialite, I worked 60-hour weeks completing my surgical residency. They criticized my absence from family events. I was saving children's lives. They commented on my simple wardrobe. I was covered in surgical scrubs most days. They questioned why Michael and I lived in a modest colonial in Ashford instead of the offered wing in the family compound. We wanted our own life. Michael stood by me through it all. Or so I thought. He was the chief of cardiology at Memorial Hospital in Hartford, the youngest in the hospital's history. We'd meet for quick lunches in the cafeteria, both of us exhausted, but exhilarated by our work. He'd steal French fries from my plate and tell me about the complex bypass surgery he'd just completed, while I'd share stories about the premature twins I was helping to thrive. We were building something real, something meaningful, away from the suffocating expectations of Greenwich society. The cracks began to show 2 years ago when Patricia was diagnosed with a mild heart condition. Suddenly, every family dinner became a guilt trip about how we lived too far away, how Michael should be closer to monitor his mother's health. Never mind that her condition was completely manageable, and she had a team of excellent doctors. She wanted her son, her successful cardiologist son, at her beck and call. Maybe we should consider moving closer, Michael had suggested one night after a particularly tense family dinner. We were lying in bed in our Ashford home, the antique quilt my grandmother made covering us. Closer to Greenwich? I'd turned to look at him, searching his face in the moonlight. Michael, we have our lives here, our careers, our home, our friends. Your mother has a mild arrhythmia, not a critical condition. He'd sighed, running his hands through his dark hair. I know, it's just, they're getting older. And the pressure, Sarah. You don't hear the phone calls I get from Dad about the family legacy, about expectations. That was the first time I realized the golden boy persona might be more burden than blessing. Then came that awful night, 3 weeks ago. Michael had been working late, preparing for a complicated surgery scheduled for the next morning. He'd texted me around 9, grabbing coffee and heading home soon. Love you. Save me some of that pasta. I'd fallen asleep on the couch waiting for him, the news droning in the background. The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. Not from the hospital, but from Christine. Her voice was strange, almost triumphant beneath the false concern. There's been an accident. Michael's car hit a tree on Route 84. You should come to Greenwich Medical Center. I'd driven those dark roads in a haze, my surgical training keeping me focused even as my heart shattered into pieces. By the time I arrived, Michael was already gone. Massive head trauma, they said. Instant. No suffering. The words meant nothing and everything. Patricia and Richard were there, surrounded by their Greenwich crowd. When I walked in, still in my pajamas with Michael's Yale sweatshirt thrown over them, the conversation stopped. Patricia looked at me with something I couldn't quite identify. Grief? Yes, but also something else. Calculation? Satisfaction? Sarah, she'd said, the first time she'd ever used my first name without it sounding like an insult. How terrible for you to lose him so young. At least you have your career to fall back on. At the funeral, I was relegated to the second row. The first row was for immediate family, Christine had explained, guiding me to my seat as if I were a distant cousin rather than Michael's wife. I sat through eulogies that painted a picture of a man I barely recognized. The perfect son, the Greenwich golden boy, the heir to a legacy. They spoke of his achievements at the country club, his potential in politics, his suitable breeding. Only David mentioned Michael's actual passion for medicine, his dedication to his patients, the way he'd light up when talking about new surgical techniques. The reading of the will was scheduled for today, exactly 3 weeks after the funeral. I'd received no formal notification, learning about it only when David texted me yesterday. They're planning something tomorrow at the house. Thought you should know. I had to call the family attorney's office myself, only to be told by his secretary that my presence wasn't required. The family has indicated this is a private matter, she'd said, her voice professionally distant. This morning, I'd dressed carefully in the black suit I wore to important surgeries, the one that made me feel competent and in control. I'd driven to Greenwich, through the familiar streets lined with mansions and private gates, to the Whitmore Estate where I'd never been welcome. And now here I sit, watching through the rain as people who barely knew Michael gather to divide his earthly possessions. The security guard at the gate recognized me. I'd seen him every holiday for 7 years, but shook his head sadly when I rolled down my window. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "I have specific instructions." As I sit in my car, fingers drumming against the steering wheel, I remember something Michael said during our last real conversation, the morning of the day he died. We'd been rushing around the kitchen, both running late for early surgeries. "Sarah," he'd called as I grabbed my coffee and headed for the door. "I need to tell you something tonight. Something important. I've been putting it off, but we need to talk, okay?" I'd paused at the door, studied his face. He looked tired, worried. Everything okay? It will be, he'd said, attempting a smile. I promise. Tonight. I love you. Those were the last words he ever said to me. Thunder rumbles overhead, and I watch as the last of the guests hurry inside the mansion. The massive oak doors close with a finality that feels like a chapter ending, or maybe a book slamming shut. I put my car in reverse, ready to drive back to my empty house in Ashford, when my phone buzzes. It's a text from an unknown number. Dr. Sarah Whitmore? This is Jonathan Miller from Miller & Associates. I was your husband's private attorney. Please meet me at the Starbucks on Greenwich Avenue in 20 minutes. There's something you need to know about your husband's will. Something his family doesn't want you to see. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My heart pounds as I stare at the message. A private attorney? Michael and I had used the family lawyers for everything. Why would he have a private attorney? And what could be so important that this stranger is reaching out while the family conducts their exclusive reading? I glance once more at the Whitmore mansion, at the closed doors and drawn curtains, at the world that's shutting me out. Then I put my car in drive and head toward Greenwich Avenue, toward answers I didn't even know I was seeking. The rain intensifies as I navigate the familiar streets, past the boutiques and galleries where Patricia and Christine held court, past the country club where Michael learned to play golf before he could properly hold a pencil. Every corner holds a memory, every street a reminder of the life I'm being exiled from. But as I pull into the Starbucks parking lot, I feel something shift inside me. Perhaps it's the surgeon in me, trained to remain calm in crisis, or maybe it's just the stubborn Boston girl who fought her way into Yale on merit alone. Whatever it is, I square my shoulders as I walk through the coffee shop doors. Because sometimes the most important truths are the ones people try hardest to hide. The Starbucks on Greenwich Avenue feels surreal in its normalcy. Mothers chat over lattes while their toddlers play with wooden stirrers. Business people tap urgently on laptops. The espresso machine hisses and gurgles, a familiar soundtrack to an unfamiliar moment. I scan the room and spot a man in his early 50s sitting alone in the corner, a leather briefcase beside him. He looks up as I approach, and I recognize something in his eyes. The same careful assessment I use when meeting a patient's family, for the first time. Dr. Whitmore? He stands, extending his hand. Jonathan Miller. Thank you for coming. His handshake is firm, professional. I notice the worn gold wedding band, the slightly frayed cuffs of his expensive suit. This isn't one of the Whitmore family's slick corporate lawyers with their $1,000 shoes and practiced smiles. I don't understand, I say as we sit. Michael never mentioned having a private attorney. Jonathan opens his briefcase and pulls out a manila folder. He contacted me 6 months ago, said he needed someone outside the family circle, someone his parents couldn't influence or access. He pauses, studying my face. He was very specific about that. A chill runs through me despite the warm coffee shop air. Why? Before I answer that, I need to give you this. He slides an envelope across the table. My name is written. On it in Michael's distinctive handwriting, the same careful script that filled countless patient charts, birthday cards, love notes left on my pillow during long shifts. He gave this to me with specific instructions, Jonathan continues. If anything happened to him, I was to give it to you personally. Not mail it, not leave it with anyone else. Put it directly in your hands. I stare at the envelope, my surgical hands suddenly trembling. When did he... 6 months ago. The same day he hired me to create a separate will, a legal one that supersedes anything his family lawyers might have drawn up. The coffee shop noise fades to a distant hum. A separate will? Jonathan nods. What they're reading at the Whitmore Estate right now is an old document from before your marriage. Michael knew they'd try to use it, which is why he took precautions. I pick up the envelope, feeling its weight. There's something besides paper inside, something small and solid. I don't understand. Why all the secrecy? We never kept secrets from each other. Sometimes we keep secrets to protect the ones we love, Jonathan says gently. Read the letter, then we'll discuss the will. With shaking fingers, I open the envelope. A small key falls onto the table, brass, old-fashioned, attached to a ring with a tiny silver heart. I recognize it immediately. The key to Michael's childhood treehouse, the one place on the Whitmore property where he said he felt truly free. I pick up the letter, unfolding the familiar stationery we'd chosen, together for our home office. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I've failed to find the courage to tell you everything in person, and something has happened to me. I'm so sorry. There are things about my family, about our situation, that I've kept from you. Not out of distrust, but out of love and, I'll admit, cowardice. 6 months ago, I discovered something that changed everything. My annual physical showed an anomaly, the same genetic marker that killed my grandfather at 45 and my Uncle James at 42. The heart condition my mother claims to have. It's real, but not in the way she presents it. It's hereditary, and it's lethal. Dr. Thomas Brennan, my childhood friend who's now researching genetic cardiac conditions, confirmed what I suspected. I inherited it. I have to stop reading, my vision blurring. The coffee shop spins around me. Michael knew. He knew he was dying and never told me. All those late nights I thought he was working. Was he seeing doctors? Getting second opinions? Planning for a future without him? Jonathan slides a glass of water across the table. Take your time. I force myself to continue reading. I didn't tell you because I couldn't bear to see the fear in your eyes every time you looked at me. I couldn't let our remaining time together be overshadowed by a ticking clock, but I also couldn't leave you unprotected. My family doesn't know about my diagnosis. If they did, they'd use it to their advantage somehow. They always do. What they do know is that I've been slowly moving assets, changing documentation, preparing for the inevitable. They think I'm being influenced by you, pulling away from the family. Mother has been particularly vocal about her suspicions that you're poisoning me against them. The truth is simpler and more complex. I've finally seen them clearly. Maybe facing mortality does that. I've watched how they treat you, how they've tried to diminish you, control us, mold you into their image, or push you out entirely. I've been complicit in my silence, and I'm ashamed of that. But I can make it right. Jonathan Miller has my real will, the legal one. Everything goes to you, Sarah. Not just the obvious assets, but everything they don't know about. The trusts my grandmother set up that they've forgotten exist. The research foundation I've been quietly building, the patents from my cardiac device innovations, the property in Vermont we talked about buying but never did. I bought it anyway, in your name alone. I look up at Jonathan, tears streaming down my face. He bought the Vermont property? Jonathan smiles slightly. Paid cash. Title is in your name. He said you fell in love with it during a medical conference 3 years ago. I remember that weekend. We'd driven through Stowe, stopped at a little farmhouse with a for sale sign. I'd fantasized about turning it into a retreat for families of sick children, a place of respite and healing. Michael had listened to me dream out loud, asked questions, made me describe every detail of my vision. Keep reading, Jonathan says softly. The key is to my treehouse, but not for sentiment. I've left something there for you. Documents, evidence, information you'll need. My family won't think to look there. They don't know I still go there to think, to be myself, to remember who I was before I became who they wanted me to be. There's something else you need to know. The night before my father had his first heart attack 5 years ago, he called me to his study. He was drunk, more honest than I'd ever seen him. He told me about the family's real wealth, about decisions made decades ago that shaped who we are today. He told me about the people they'd hurt, the corners they'd cut, the lives they'd destroyed to build their empire. He made me promise never to tell you, said it would taint you to know. But you deserve the truth. You deserve to know exactly who these people are before they try to convince you that you're nothing without the Whitmore name. The truth is, the Whitmore name is nothing without the lies propping it up. In my treehouse, you'll find everything: bank statements, property deeds, documentation of the foundation, but also the other documents, the ones that show who the Whitmores really are. Use them as you see fit. Protect yourself. I know. My family will try to exclude you, diminish you, erase our life together. Don't let them. You are the bravest person I know, the most genuine, the most deserving of every good thing this world has to offer. You saved me, Sarah. Not with your surgical skills, but with your love, your integrity, your refusal to be anything but yourself. The cardiac screening results are in the treehouse too. I want you to know I fought. I tried everything. Experimental. Treatments, lifestyle changes, medications. I wanted more time with you. God, I wanted so much more time. Whatever happens, know this. Choosing you was the best decision I ever made. Defying my family's expectations to marry you was the only time I've ever felt truly free. You were my redemption, my joy, my real life, while everything else was just performance. Live, Sarah. Live fully and completely. Take the foundation and make it into something beautiful. Help children, save lives, be the force of good I know you are. And if you find love again, and I hope you do, choose someone who sees your light and protects it, not someone who tries to dim it to make themselves shine brighter. All my love, always. Michael. P.S. Trust Jonathan, trust David, and whatever you do, don't sign anything my family gives you without Jonathan reviewing it first. They'll try to make you feel small, try to buy your silence or your compliance. Remember, you hold all the cards now. They just don't know it yet. The letter falls from my numb fingers. Jonathan reaches across the table, briefly covering my hand with his. He loved you very much. He knew, I whisper. He knew he was dying, and he spent his last months protecting me instead of... I can't finish the sentence. Instead of letting me protect him. Instead of letting me be his wife, his partner in this last battle. He was protecting you by letting you be yourself, Jonathan says. He told me about your work with the pediatric cardiac patients, how you were developing new surgical techniques. He didn't want that to stop. He didn't want you watching him die slowly when you could be saving other lives. I think about the past 6 months. Michael had encouraged me to take on more complex cases, to attend conferences, to collaborate with other surgeons. I thought he was being supportive of my career. Now I realize he was making sure I'd be okay after he was gone, that I'd have purpose, connections, achievements that were mine alone. What's in the real will? I ask, wiping my eyes. Jonathan opens the folder. Everything. The house in Ashford, obviously, but also several properties the family doesn't know about. Investment accounts worth approximately $30 million. His grandmother was apparently quite the investor, and she left trusts for each grandchild that could only be accessed after marriage. The family lawyers never filed the paperwork to activate Michael's trust after your wedding. $30 million. I stare at Jonathan. That's impossible. We lived modestly. Michael drove a 5-year-old car. We clipped coupons. He wasn't interested in wealth for its own sake, Jonathan says. But he was very interested in making sure you'd be secure, that you'd have resources to do good in the world. There's also the foundation, the Evelyn Grace Foundation, named after your grandmother's. It's already funded with $10 million. The paperwork makes you the sole director. I think of my grandmother Evelyn, who raised 6 children on a teacher's salary, who taught me to read by lamplight. who died when I was in medical school but lived long enough to see me in my white coat, and Grace Whitmore, Michael's paternal grandmother, the one family member who'd been kind to me at our wedding, whispering, "Make him happy, dear. He's been pretending so long. He's forgotten how." The patents alone generate about $2 million annually, Jonathan continues. Michael was brilliant, as you know. His innovations in minimally invasive cardiac procedures have been adopted worldwide. All royalties now come to you. His family doesn't know about any of this. They know about some investments, the obvious assets. But Michael was careful. He used his grandmother's maiden name for some holdings, created LLCs, moved money quietly. It's all legal, all properly documented. They can contest the will, but they won't win. I've made sure of that. I pick up the brass key, feeling it's... Wait. Why the treehouse? He said it was the one place on the estate his parents never went. Too undignified to climb a ladder, apparently. Jonathan's smile is sad. He spent hours there as a child, reading medical journals his grandfather had given him, dreaming of becoming a doctor who actually helped people rather than just managing the family fortune. The rain has stopped, weak sunlight filtering through the coffee shop windows. I check my phone. 3 missed calls from Patricia, 2 from Christine, and a text from David. They're losing their minds here. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I need to go to the treehouse, I say. Jonathan nods. I'll drive you. My car is less recognizable than yours, and there's a back entrance to the property through the old servants' quarters. Michael showed me the way. As we stand to leave, I ask the question that's been nagging at me. Why did he trust you? No offense, but you're not exactly the type of lawyer the Whitmores typically use. Jonathan's smile is warm now, genuine. I represented his childhood friend Maria, the housekeeper's daughter. She needed help getting her son into a special needs program, and the family lawyers wouldn't touch it, not enough money in it. Michael heard about it, hired me quietly, paid my fees himself. Afterward, he said I was the first lawyer he'd met, who cared more about justice than billable hours. We walked to Jonathan's sensible sedan, a far cry from the luxury vehicles lining the Whitmore Estate. As we drive through Greenwich's back roads, I think about Michael's letter, about the man I married versus the man his family wanted him to be. How many times had he chosen their expectations over his own desires? How many compromises had he made before he met me? But he chose me. Despite everything, he chose me, and spent his last months ensuring I'd be okay when he was gone. The thought breaks my heart and fills it simultaneously. There's something else, Jonathan says as we turn onto a narrow dirt road. Something I haven't told you yet. This morning, before the will reading, Richard Whitmore called me. He knows I exist, knows Michael hired me. He offered me a substantial sum to destroy any documents I might have and to convince you to sign away your rights to the estate. When I refused, he threatened to destroy my practice. Can he do that? Jonathan's laugh is sharp. He can try. But I've been practicing law for 30 years, and I've faced down bigger bullies than Richard Whitmore. Besides, I have something he doesn't. What's that? Integrity. And a very detailed recording of his attempted bribe, thanks to Connecticut's one-party consent law. I find myself smiling for the first time in weeks. Michael chose well. He chose well in many things, Jonathan says, glancing at me, especially in wives. We pull up to a small gate in a stone wall. Behind it, I can see the massive oak tree that holds Michael's childhood refuge. My heart pounds as I climb out of the car, brass key clutched in my palm. Somewhere in that treehouse are answers, truths, and the final pieces of my husband's last gift to me. But more than that, I realize as I walk toward the ladder, there's Michael himself, not the polished Greenwich doctor or the dutiful son, but the boy who dreamed of saving lives, who read medical journals by flashlight, who grew up to marry a scholarship student from Boston despite every pressure to conform. The boy who became the man I loved. The man who, even facing death, put my future before his fear. I climbed the ladder steadily, surgeon's hands finding each rung with practiced precision. Whatever waits for me in that treehouse, whatever truths about the Whitmore family Michael thought I needed to know, I'm ready. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is preparing someone to stand alone. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property or social standing. Sometimes it's simply the truth. The treehouse door creaks as I unlock it, and afternoon sunlight streams through the windows. Inside, on a small wooden desk, sits a box wrapped in the Sunday comics. Michael always wrapped my gifts in newspaper comics, said it made him happy to give me something that had already brought joy to the world. Next to it, a bouquet of dried forget-me-nots, my favorite flower, the ones I carried at our wedding. And underneath them both, a note in Michael's handwriting. For my Sarah, who taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but love in action. Time to act, my love. Time to show them who you really are. I opened the box with steady hands, ready to discover what my husband fought to protect, what his family fought to hide, and what truths will set us all free. The afternoon light slants through the treehouse windows, illuminating dust motes that dance in the air like golden confetti. The space is smaller than I expected, but meticulously organized. So very Michael. Legal folders line one wall, medical, journals stack another, and in the center sits the desk where he must have spent countless hours planning for a future he wouldn't see. Inside the box, I find several items carefully arranged. First, a leather portfolio containing financial documents. Bank, statements, investment accounts, property deeds. The numbers are staggering, far beyond what Jonathan had outlined. But it's not the wealth that takes my breath away. It's the careful notations in Michael's handwriting beside each entry. For Sarah's pediatric surgery research, for the children's hospice project she mentioned, for the free clinic in Boston she wants to support. He had been listening. Every dream I'd shared, every passing mention of a project I wanted to pursue, he'd documented and funded. Beneath the financial papers, I find a small digital recorder and a set of USB drives labeled with dates. The oldest goes back 5 years, to right after his father's heart attack. I pocket these for later, sensing they contain the darker truths Michael mentioned. But it's the medical file that stops me cold. Michael's genetic testing results, his treatment records, correspondence with Dr. Thomas Brennan about experimental therapies. The timeline becomes clear. He'd known for 8 months, not 6. The last 2 months of his life, he'd stopped all treatment. A sticky note on the final page reads, "Chose quality over quantity. Wanted our last months to be about living, not dying. No regrets." I sink into the old beanbag chair in the corner, overwhelmed. Through the window, I can see the Whitmore mansion in the distance, its windows glowing in the fading light. Are they still reading their version of the will? Still dividing up possessions while remaining ignorant of the real estate? My phone buzzes. It's a text from David. "Family meeting just ended. They're planning to contest any claim you make. Mom's already called her lawyers. They think you have nothing without them." I almost laugh. If they only knew what I'm holding, what Michael has given me. Not just financial security, but ammunition. Because beneath everything else in the box, wrapped in plastic for protection, are documents that make my blood run cold. Contracts from 40 years ago showing how Richard Whitmore destroyed his business partner to gain full control of their company. Medical records suggesting his father had covered up a patient's death to protect the family's reputation. Financial transactions that skirted legality. Political contributions that bought influence. A paper trail of moral compromises spanning generations. And at the very bottom, a letter from Grace Whitmore to her son Richard, dated 30 years ago. Your obsession with wealth and status has poisoned this family. You've raised your children to value appearances over substance, connections over compassion. I pray one of them breaks free before it's too late. Michael broke free. He just didn't live long enough to enjoy his freedom. I'm so absorbed in the documents that I don't hear the ladder creaking until a shadow falls across the doorway. My heart pounds as I look up, expecting to see Richard or Christine. Instead, it's Dr. Thomas Brennan, Michael's childhood friend. "Sarah," he says softly. "I thought I might find you here. John Miller told me you'd need a friend about now." I've met Thomas only a few times, at medical conferences, holiday parties where he'd been one of the few to treat me as an equal. He's carrying a thermos and what looks like a medical bag. "Michael asked me to check on you," he continues, settling beside me on the floor. "Not medically, just as a friend. He worried about you being alone when you learned everything." "You knew?" My voice cracks. "About his condition?" Thomas nods, pain flickering across his face. "I diagnosed him, tried everything to change the outcome. Michael was remarkably at peace with it. His only concern was you." "He should have told me," I whisper. "I could have..." "What? Watched him die slowly? Given up your surgeries to monitor his every heartbeat?" That's exactly what he didn't want. He said, "Let Sarah save the ones who can be saved. Let her remember me as I am, not as I'll become." Tears fall freely now. I would have wanted to try. He knew that. It's one of the things he loved most about you, your refusal to give up. But sometimes, Sarah, the bravest thing is knowing when to let go. Thomas pours tea from the thermos, and we sit in companionable silence as I process this. Outside, twilight paints the sky in shades of purple and gold. Finally, I ask the question that's been nagging at me since I found the medical files. "The car accident, was it really an accident?" Thomas meets my eyes steadily. The autopsy showed he had a massive cardiac event while driving. He was gone before the car hit the tree. So yes, it was an accident, but one that was always going to happen. His heart simply stopped. There's odd comfort in this, knowing he didn't suffer, didn't linger, didn't have to experience the slow decline he feared. "What are you going to do?" Thomas asks, gesturing to the documents spread around us. I consider the question. The financial documents alone ensure I'll never want for anything. I could take the money and disappear, start fresh somewhere the Whitmore name means nothing. But Michael didn't gather all this information just for my financial security. He wanted me to have choices. I honestly don't know, I admit. Part of me wants to expose them all, show the world who they really are. But another part just wants to grieve my husband in peace, to honor his memory by living the life we planned. Thomas nods. For what it's worth, Michael said he trusted you to make the right choice. He said you have something his family never understood, the ability to see beyond yourself, to think about the greater good. My phone rings, displaying Patricia's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rings again. Christine this time. The third call is from Richard himself. "They're getting desperate," I murmur. "They should be," Thomas says. "Jonathan tells me the real will is ironclad. Everything they thought was theirs is actually yours." I listen to Richard's voicemail. "Sarah, we need to discuss this situation rationally. There's been a misunderstanding about Michael's wishes. Call me immediately." His voice carries the same tone he uses with difficult business associates, commanding, slightly threatening, absolutely certain of his position. It's the voice of a man who's never been told no, never faced real consequences, never had to question his own authority. The decision crystallizes in that moment. I won't destroy the Whitmores. That's not who I am. But I won't let them erase me either. Won't let them rewrite Michael's story to suit their narrative. I need to go to that house, I tell Thomas. Not to fight, but to face them. To let them know I know everything and that I'm not afraid. Thomas smiles slightly. Michael said you'd say something like that. He left you one more thing. He reaches into his medical bag and pulls out a small jewelry box. He bought this the day after his diagnosis. Said he wanted you to have something that was just from him, not from the Whitmores. Inside is a simple silver locket. When I open it, I find 2 tiny photographs. One of us on our wedding day, laughing in that converted barn. The other of the Vermont farmhouse I'd dreamed about. On the back is engraved, "Home is where you are." I clasp it around my neck, feeling its weight against my chest. Then I begin gathering the documents, organizing them with surgical precision. Some will go to Jonathan for safekeeping. Others will come with me to the Whitmore mansion. Because I have one more visit to make, one more conversation to have. As we climb down from the treehouse, Thomas carrying the box of documents, I feel a strange sense of calm. The setting sun casts long shadows across the Whitmore grounds, and I realize this might be the last time I set foot on this property. Will you come with me? I ask Thomas. To the house? I could use a witness. Of course, he says without hesitation. Michael made me promise to stand by you if you needed it. Besides, I have a few things to say to Richard myself about how he treated his son. We walk toward the mansion, 2 doctors carrying boxes of truth. Behind us, the treehouse stands empty now. Its secrets revealed, its purpose fulfilled. Ahead, lights blaze from every window of the Whitmore Estate, as if brightness alone could keep the darkness at bay. But darkness isn't always something to be feared. Sometimes it's just the absence of false light, the space where truth can finally breathe. As we approach the front door, I touch the locket at my throat and think of Michael's words. Time to show them who you really are. I'm not the scholarship student from Boston anymore, not the outsider they barely tolerated at their dinner table. I'm Dr. Sarah Whitmore, pediatric surgeon, widow of their son, keeper of their secrets, and heir to more than they ever imagined. And I'm about to introduce myself properly. The brass key is still in my pocket, warm from my grip. I won't need it again, but I'll keep it always. A reminder of the boy who became the man I loved, who trusted me with his truth, who gave me the power to choose my own path. The massive front door looms before us. Through the glass panels, I can see figures moving in the foyer, Patricia pacing, Christine gesturing wildly, Richard standing with his arms crossed. I take a deep breath, square my shoulders, and ring the doorbell. Time to act, my love. Time to show them who I really am. Inside the Whitmore mansion, the air feels thick with tension and old money. The foyer hasn't changed since my first visit, 8 years ago. Still the same Persian rugs, the same portrait of stern-faced Whitmore ancestors, the same chandelier that Patricia loves to mention cost more than most people's cars. But I see it differently now, through the lens of Michael's inheritance and Thomas's steady presence beside me. Patricia appears first, her face a mask of carefully applied makeup that can't quite hide the strain around her eyes. She's changed. From the black Chanel suit she wore to the will reading into cream-colored cashmere, as if mourning has a time limit in Greenwich society. Sarah. She says my name like it tastes bitter. This is highly inappropriate. We're in the middle of a family meeting. I am family, I reply, stepping past her into the foyer. The marble floor echoes under my feet, the same floor where Michael proposed to me after a particularly tense Christmas dinner, whispering, "Marry me, and we'll make our own traditions." Christine emerges from the living room, her phone clutched. In her manicured hand, "You can't just barge in here. Daddy, she's here." Richard appears in the doorway, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression shifting from annoyance to calculation as he notices Thomas beside me. "Dr. Brennan, I wasn't expecting you." "I imagine there's a lot you weren't expecting, Richard," Thomas replies coolly. I set the box of documents on the antique console table, the one Patricia claims belonged to John Adams, but Michael once told me she bought at an estate sale in Westchester. "We need to talk," I say, meeting Richard's gaze steadily. "About Michael's will, his real will." The silence stretches for a moment before Patricia's composure cracks. "There is no other will. Your family attorneys have an outdated document from before our marriage," I interrupt. "Michael created a new will 6 months ago, with a different lawyer." Richard's jaw tightens. "That's impossible. Michael would never." "Michael did a lot of things you didn't know about," I say, pulling out Jonathan's business card. "You've already met Mr. Miller, I believe. Tried to bribe him this morning." The color drains from Richard's face. Christine looks between her parents, confusion replacing her usual smugness. "Daddy, what is she talking about?" "Perhaps we should sit down," Richard says, his voice carefully controlled. "Discuss this like civilized people." I almost laugh at the word civilized. As if there's anything civilized about trying to erase your son's wife from his life, his death, his legacy. We move to the living room, the same room where Patricia once told me my dress was brave for a hospital fundraiser, where Christine announced her engagement to a hedge fund prince while making sure to mention his family's net worth, where Richard lectured Michael about appropriate career trajectories, while I sat silent, biting my tongue. I don't sit. Neither does Thomas. We stand while the Whitmores arrange themselves on their silk-upholstered furniture like a tableau of wounded nobility. "Michael left me everything," I say simply. "The house, the investments, the patents, the foundation. But more than that, he left me the truth about all of you." Patricia's face twists. "You poisoned him against us. From the day you met him, you've been working to steal him away." "I loved him," I cut her off. "Something you never quite managed, did you? Too busy trying to mold him into your image to see who he really was." "How dare you? He was dying." The words fall into the room like stones into still water. "A genetic heart condition, the same one that killed his grandfather and uncle. He had 8 months to live, and he spent them making sure I'd be protected from all of you." The revelation hits them differently. Patricia's hand flies to her throat. Christine drops her phone. But Richard's expression barely changes, and in that moment, I know. "You knew," I breathe. "You knew about the genetic condition." Richard's silence is damning. Patricia turns to him, horror dawning on her face. "Richard?" "It wasn't confirmed," he says stiffly. "There was always a chance Michael hadn't inherited it." "But you knew it was possible," Thomas interjects, his medical calm cracking with anger. "You knew and you never had him tested as a child? Never warned him? And risk his future, his marriage prospects, the family's reputation?" Richard's mask finally slips, revealing the calculation beneath. "Heart conditions are bad for business." I feel sick. All those years of Michael pushing himself, working endless hours, carrying the weight of family expectations, all while a time bomb ticked in his chest. "He found out during a routine physical," I say, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "When he realized you'd kept it from him, he started planning, moving assets, protecting them from you, protecting me from you." "Those assets belong to the family," Christine snaps, finding her voice. "You can't just—" "Actually, I can." I pull out the financial documents. His grandmother's trusts, the patent royalties, the properties he bought privately. It's all legal, all properly transferred. Your family lawyers can confirm it once they see the real will. Patricia stands, her composure shattered. "This is theft. We'll contest it. You'll lose." I face her directly, no longer the intimidated daughter-in-law she's tried to diminish for 7 years. But before you waste money on lawyers, you should know what else Michael left me. I gesture to the box. 40 years of Whitmore family history. Every deal, every cover-up, every corner cut. The real story of how Richard destroyed his partner. The truth about the patient who died because your father-in-law prioritized reputation over ethics. The financial transactions that would interest the SEC. The political contributions that bought zoning changes for your developments. Richard goes very still. You're bluffing. Am I? I pull out Grace Whitmore's letter to her son. Your own mother knew what you were. She saw how you were poisoning this family with greed and ambition. She wrote it all down. I hand him the letter. His hands shake slightly as he reads his mother's words, her condemnation of everything he'd built, her hope that one of her grandchildren would break free. Michael broke free, I continue. He chose love over legacy, integrity over inheritance, and he made sure that when he was gone, the truth would survive. What do you want? Patricia's voice is smaller now, defeated. Money? More than what he left you? I don't want anything from you, I reply. I have everything Michael wanted me to have. But I am going to make you a deal. Richard looks up from his mother's letter. What kind of deal? You leave me alone. Completely. No contests to the will. No attempts to manipulate or control the narrative of Michael's life. No whisper campaigns in your social circles. In return, these documents stay private. The world continues to see the Whitmores as pillars of Greenwich society. And if we refuse? Christine challenges, but her voice lacks its usual confidence. Then I give everything to the Wall Street Eye. Journal. Let them sort through it all. I'm sure they'd find the story of a medical dynasty built on secrets and lies quite compelling. Thomas steps forward. I should add that Michael's medical records clearly show the genetic component of his condition. Any lawsuit suggesting Sarah had something to do with his death would be medical fraud. I'd be happy to testify to that. The room falls silent. I can see them calculating, weighing their options, realizing they've been outmaneuvered by the son they thought they controlled and the daughter-in-law they dismissed. Finally, Richard speaks. You have no idea what it takes to build something like this, to maintain it, the choices we had to make. I know exactly what it takes, I interrupt. Michael showed me. It takes lies and manipulation and treating people as commodities. It takes valuing wealth over family, status over love, appearance over truth. I pick up the box, preparing to leave. I'll give you 3 days to decide. Jonathan Miller has copies of everything, with instructions to release them if anything happens to me. Try to remember that I'm not your enemy. I'm just the woman your son loved, the woman he trusted with his legacy. As Thomas and I turn to leave, Patricia calls out. Wait! I pause, looking back at the woman who made my life difficult for 7 years. Patricia's voice wavers, her perfectly maintained facade finally cracking. Was Michael happy? With you? The question catches me off guard. For 7 years, this woman has treated my marriage like a temporary inconvenience, an unfortunate phase her son would eventually outgrow. Now, in the face of losing everything she thought she controlled, she's asking about her son's happiness. Yes, I answer simply. He was happy. We were happy. How can you know that? Christine interjects, her voice brittle. He never told us. Because he didn't have to perform with me, I reply, turning to face them fully. He didn't have to be the perfect son, the Greenwich golden boy, the heir to a legacy he never wanted. He could just be Michael. I think of our quiet mornings in Ashford, sharing coffee and medical journals. The way he'd dance with me in our kitchen to the radio while dinner burned on the stove. How he'd call me between surgeries just to hear my voice, leaving voicemails that said nothing but "I love you" when I couldn't answer. The Michael you knew, I continue. was who you demanded he be. The Michael I knew was who he chose to be. Richard's jaw clenches. We gave him everything. The best schools, connections, opportunities. You gave him obligations, Thomas interjects quietly. I've known Michael since we were 5 years old. He wanted to join Doctors Without Borders after medical school. Do you remember what you told him? That Whitmores don't waste their talents on charity work. Patricia sinks back onto the sofa. We wanted what was best for him. You wanted what was best for the Whitmore name, I correct. There's a difference. I pull out one more document from the box, a letter Michael wrote but never sent, dated 3 months before his death. He wrote this for you. I found it in his desk at home. I think you should read it. With trembling hands, Patricia takes the letter. Richard and Christine crowd behind her, reading over her shoulder. I know the words by heart now, having read them a dozen times since finding them. Dear Mom and Dad, I've started this letter so many times, never finding the right words. How do you tell the people who raised you that they never really knew you? How do you explain that their love felt like a cage, their expectations like chains? I know you think Sarah changed me, pulled me away from the family. The truth is, she gave me permission to be who I always was. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to apologize for choosing pediatric cardiology over cardiac surgery because it paid less. I didn't have to justify living in a modest house because it felt like a home, not a showcase. I didn't have to pretend that status and society connections meant more to me than saving lives. You raised me to be your legacy, but I wanted to be a person. Sarah saw the person first, loved him completely, and never asked him to be anything else. I'm writing this because I know my time is limited. The heart condition grandfather had, the one that killed Uncle James, I have it too. You knew it was possible, Dad. You knew, and you chose to gamble with my life rather than risk the family's reputation. I've made my peace with that betrayal, but Sarah doesn't know. I won't tell her because she has enough reasons to hate you, and I want her to have the choice to forgive. Everything I'm leaving her, she deserves. Not because she married into wealth, but because she married for love. She chose me when I had nothing to offer but myself. You chose your legacy over your son's life. Let that distinction guide your actions after I'm gone. Despite everything, I do love you both. I just wish you had loved me, the real me, half as much as you loved the idea of what a Whitmore should be. Michael. The letter floats to the floor as Patricia's hands lose their strength. Her face crumples, years of Botox and careful control, giving way to raw grief. He knew we knew, she whispers. About the condition, he knew and he forgave us. He was kinder than you deserved, I say quietly. Christine, for once, says nothing. She stares at the letter on the floor like it might burst into flames. Richard's face has gone gray, aging a decade in moments. The foundation Michael established, I continue. It's for pediatric cardiac research, specifically for genetic conditions like his. He named it after our grandmothers. Evelyn, my grandmother who taught in Boston public schools for 40 years, and Grace, your mother who apparently saw through all of this decades ago. Mother never understood, Richard begins automatically, then stops. The portrait of Grace Whitmore hangs above the fireplace, painted when she was 30, her eyes seemingly fixed on her son with gentle disappointment. She understood perfectly, I reply. That's why she set up those trusts with such specific conditions. Marriage to someone outside the Greenwich circle, pursuit of a profession that helped others. She was trying to save one of you from becoming what you became. Thomas clears his throat. Michael asked me to tell you something else. He wanted you to know that his last months were the happiest of his life. He spent them doing what he loved, with someone who loved him for exactly who He was. He considered that a life well lived. The weight of this settles over the room. Outside, night has fallen completely, and the automatic lights have turned the estate grounds into a glittering display of wealth and privilege. But inside this room, something fundamental has shifted. The Vermont property, Patricia says suddenly, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. The farmhouse. What will you do with it? I'm surprised she knows about it, then remember Michael mentioned it once, at a family dinner, only to have Richard dismiss it as provincial. I'm turning it into a retreat, I answer. For families of children undergoing cardiac surgery, a place where they can stay, rest, find support while their children heal. Michael helped me plan it. Something flickers in Patricia's eyes. Perhaps a glimpse of what her son saw in me, what she refused to acknowledge for 7 years. He would have been a wonderful father, she murmurs. The statement hangs in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. I touch my abdomen unconsciously, then catch myself. But Patricia notices, and her eyes widen. Are you? No, I say quickly. We were trying, but I don't finish. We'd started fertility treatment 6 months ago, just after Michael's diagnosis. He'd insisted, said he wanted to leave, me with more than just memories. But stress, grief, and perhaps some cosmic irony had prevented conception. We would have welcomed a grandchild, Patricia says softly, and for the first time, I hear genuine regret in her voice. Whatever our feelings about other things. Christine shifts uncomfortably. Mother, don't. No, Patricia interrupts her daughter. No more. We've lost enough to pride and pretense. She looks at me directly. I'm sorry, Sarah, for all of it. The apology catches me unprepared. I've imagined this moment. Patricia finally acknowledging her treatment of me, but always in anger, in defeat. Not in genuine sorrow. He loved you, she continues. I see that now. Really loved you, in a way that perhaps Richard and I never. She glances at her husband, who stands rigid by the mantel. We thought love was providing the best of everything. We forgot that sometimes love is just accepting someone as they are. Richard clears his throat. The documents you mentioned. About the family's past. What you're proposing. A form of mutually assured destruction. I'm proposing peace, I correct. Michael's gone. Nothing can change that. But we can choose how to honor his memory. You can contest the will, drag this through courts, air every piece of dirty laundry in public. Or you can let me go. Let me use what he left me to do good in the world. And you'll keep silent? About everything? As long as you do the same. No attempts to undermine the foundation, no whisper campaigns about gold-digging widows, no interference in my life. We go our separate ways with whatever dignity remains. Richard looks around the room, at his wife's tear-stained face, his daughter's shocked silence, the portrait of his mother watching from above the mantel. You've thought this through. Michael thought it through, I reply. I'm just following the path he laid out. He was smarter than we gave him credit for, Richard admits, the words seeming to pain him, more strategic. He was his father's son, I say, watching Richard flinch at the comparison. He just chose to use those skills differently. Thomas checks his watch. Sarah, we should go. You have early rounds tomorrow. Still working? Christine asks, genuine surprise in her voice. With everything. I assumed you'd take time off. Saving children's lives doesn't stop for grief, I reply. Michael understood that. It's why he didn't tell me about his condition sooner. He knew I'd drop everything to be with him, and he didn't want that. He wanted me to keep being who I am. As I gather the documents back into the box, Patricia stands. The will reading today? Jonathan Miller wasn't lying? Everything really goes to you? Everything, I confirm. The houses, the investments, the patents, the foundation. Michael was very thorough. $30 million, Richard says quietly. Plus the ongoing patent royalties, the foundation endowment, the properties. It was never about the money, I reply. If Michael had lived, we would have been happy with our small house and our work. The money is just a tool to do good, to honor him. And if we accept your terms? Patricia asks. What then? Then we grieve, I answer simply. Separately, but peacefully. You lost a son. I lost my husband. That should matter more than anything else. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Richard nods slowly. We accept your terms. Christine starts to protest, but her father silences her with a raised hand. Enough, Christine. We've lost enough to pride. I won't lose what remains of our reputation, too. 3 days, I remind them. Jonathan Miller will need the agreement in writing. As Thomas and I move toward the door, Patricia calls out one more time. Sarah, the funeral. We didn't let. You speak. We should have. Would you like to hold your own memorial? We could help, if you wanted. I turn back, studying the woman who made my life difficult for 7 years. She looks smaller now, diminished by grief and revelation. I've already said goodbye to Michael, I reply, in my own way. But thank you for asking. As we leave, I catch a glimpse of them through the window. 3 figures isolated in their grief, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that couldn't save the one thing that mattered. The golden frames seem tarnished now, the Persian rugs threadbare, the crystal chandelier casting shadows instead of light. Thomas drives me back to my car in silence. When we reach the Starbucks parking lot, now nearly empty, he turns to me. You handled that remarkably well. I had a good teacher, I reply, thinking of Michael's calm strength, his quiet dignity in the face of his family's demands. What will you do now? Thomas asks. Go home, feed the cat, review tomorrow's surgical schedule, start planning the Vermont retreat. I pause. Live, just like Michael wanted. He'd be proud, Thomas says softly. I hope so. I touch the locket at my throat, feeling its weight. I hope I honor him well. As I drive back to Ashford, through the Connecticut darkness, I think about the word widow. Such a small word for such an enormous identity shift. But I'm more than Michael's widow. I'm a surgeon, a dreamer, a woman with the resources to make real change in the world. The house is dark when I arrive, but I don't feel alone. Michael's presence is everywhere. In the medical journals stacked by his chair, in the coffee mug he left by the sink that morning 3 weeks ago, in the note on the refrigerator reminding me to pick up milk. I haven't moved any of it yet. I'm not ready, but I am ready for tomorrow. Ready to return to the hospital, to my patients, to the life Michael wanted me to keep living. Ready to build something beautiful with what he left behind. I pull out the Vermont farmhouse photos and spread them on the kitchen table. Tomorrow, I'll call contractors. Next week, I'll meet with architects. Within a year, families will find comfort there while their children heal. That's how I'll honor him. Not with a granite memorial or a society funeral, but with lives saved, families supported, love multiplied and shared. It's what he would have wanted. It's who he was, beneath the Whitmore name and the Greenwich expectations. Just Michael. My Michael. The man who loved me enough to protect me even in death. Who gave me the tools to stand up to his family. Who trusted me with his legacy and his truth. I pour a glass of wine, the Malbec we discovered on our anniversary trip to Napa, and raise it to his empty chair. Thank you, I whisper, for everything. Outside, the October wind rustles through the trees, and I swear I can hear his voice in it. Live, Sarah. Live fully and completely. So I will. The documents are safely stored. In our home safe now. Insurance against any change of heart from the Whitmores. But I don't think they'll renege on our agreement. They've seen what Michael prepared, understood the cost of challenging his final wishes. More importantly, they've glimpsed who their son really was. Not the golden boy they tried to create, but the man who chose love over legacy, integrity over inheritance. Perhaps that knowledge will change them. Perhaps not. Either way, it's no longer my concern. I have surgeries to perform, a foundation to run, a retreat center to build. I have a life to live, the life Michael and I planned together, that I'll now complete alone but not empty-handed. His letter called me brave. I don't feel brave. I feel loved, protected, empowered by a man who saw his death coming and chose to spend his remaining time ensuring my future. That's the real inheritance. Not the money or the properties or the patents, but the knowledge that I was loved so completely, so selflessly, that even death couldn't diminish it. The Whitmores can keep their guilt, their secrets, their brittle dignity. I have something worth more. The memory of real love, the tools to do good in the world, and the freedom to be exactly who I am. Tomorrow I'll save lives at the hospital. Next month I'll break ground on the retreat center. Next year I'll expand the foundation's research grants. But tonight I'll grieve. I'll remember. I'll be grateful for 7 years with a man who chose me over everything else, who loved me enough to let me go, who gave me wings even as his own heart was failing. That's the story I'll tell, not of the Whitmore heir who died too young, but of Michael who lived and loved well, who broke free from expectations to become who he truly was, who left the world better than he found it. And I'll continue that story, one surgery at a time, one saved life at a time, one act of love at a time. Because that's what you do when someone loves you this much. You live. You thrive. You carry their love forward into the world. The wine is finished now, the house settling into its nighttime quiet. I touch the locket once more, feeling its promise against my skin. Home is where you are, it says. And he's right. Home isn't a place, not the Whitmore mansion with its cold perfection, not even this house with its warm memories. Home is the love we carry, the lives we touch, the good we do in the world. Michael is gone, but home remains. In my work, in our dreams made real, in every life saved by the research his foundation will fund. Tomorrow begins the rest of my story, the one I'll write myself, with the tools he left me, with the love he showed me, with the courage he saw in me before I saw it in myself. The Whitmores thought they were reading a will today, but Michael left me so much more than property and money. He left me possibility, purpose, power to do good, and most of all, he left me free. Free to grieve, to heal, to grow. Free to be exactly who I am, without apology or explanation. That's the real secret the Whitmores never understood. True wealth isn't measured in dollars or properties or social standing. It's measured in love given and received, in lives touched, in good done without expectation of reward. By that measure, I'm the richest woman in Greenwich tonight. Rich in love, rich in purpose, rich in the legacy of a man who saw me truly and loved me completely. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. The morning after my confrontation with the Whitmores, I wake to the sound of persistent knocking at my front door. It's barely 6 a.m., and frost still clings to the windows of our Ashford home. I throw on Michael's Yale sweatshirt and stumble downstairs, expecting to find Patricia or maybe Christine, coming to negotiate or threaten before the 3-day deadline expires. Instead, I find a woman I've never seen before. She's perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon and wearing a tailored wool coat that screams old money. But it's her eyes that stop me, the same unusual shade of green as Michael's. Dr. Sarah Whitmore? Her voice carries a slight accent I can't place. I'm Isabel Whitmore, Michael's aunt. I believe we need to talk. I stare at her, confused. Michael didn't have an aunt. Richard was an only child. Sad smile crosses her face. That's what they wanted everyone to believe. May I come in? What I have to tell you. It changes everything you think you know about the Whitmores. Against my better judgment, I step aside. She enters with the careful grace of someone who spent her life navigating hostile territory. In my kitchen, she accepts tea but doesn't. Drink it. Her fingers wrapped around the mug for warmth. I'm Richard's sister, she begins. Older by 3 years. Disowned and erased from family history 42 years ago. Why? I ask, though I can already guess. The Whitmores' talent for rewriting history to suit their narrative is well documented. I married the wrong man, Isabel says simply. James Chen, brilliant doctor, wonderful human being, completely unacceptable to the Whitmore dynasty because he was Chinese American. This was 1983, and while the rest of the world was evolving, the Whitmores clung to their prejudices like life. Preservers. She reaches into her handbag and pulls out a photograph. It shows a much younger Isabel with a handsome Asian man and 2 children, a boy and a girl, both bearing that distinctive Whitmore bone structure mixed with their father's features. My children, she says softly. Michael's cousins. He never knew they existed. I study the photograph, seeing echoes of Michael in these strangers' faces. Why are you here now, after all this time? Because Michael found me, she replies, and my heart stops. 6 months ago, he'd been researching the family history, discovered inconsistencies in the records. He hired a private investigator, tracked me down in Vancouver, where I've lived since leaving Connecticut. She pulls out another item, a letter in Michael's handwriting. My hands shake as I recognize the careful script. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this in Isabel's presence, then I'm gone, and she's kept her promise to find you. There are things about my family I couldn't bear to tell you while I was alive. Not out of shame for myself, but shame for them. Isabel's story is just one of many they've buried. She has information about the family trust structures that even I didn't fully understand until recently. More importantly, she has allies, other family members who've been exiled or silenced over the years. Together, you're stronger than the Whitmores realize. Trust her. She's the family I wish I'd grown up with. All my love. Michael. He visited me 3 times, Isabel continues. Wanted to understand why the family was the way it was. I told him about our grandfather, about the real origins of the Whitmore fortune, about the pattern of exclusion and control that goes back generations. What pattern? I ask, though I'm beginning to understand. The Whitmores don't just value their bloodline, they police it, she explains. Anyone who marries outside their approved circle is erased. Anyone who chooses a career that doesn't enhance the family prestige is disinherited. Anyone who questions the system is silenced. She pauses, studying my face. Except Michael. He was the first one they couldn't control completely. Maybe because he was the golden child, the cardiac surgeon who brought them medical prestige. Maybe because he was careful, strategic. Or maybe because he found you, someone who made him brave enough to fight back. The morning light streams through my kitchen windows, illuminating dust motes that dance like secrets finally exposed to air. Isabel continues her story, and with each revelation, the picture of the Whitmore family becomes clearer and darker. There are others, she says. Thomas, Patricia's brother, disowned for being gay in 1975. Rebecca, Richard's cousin, exiled for marrying a Jewish man. David Chen, my son, who's now a federal judge but doesn't exist in Whitmore records. We've formed our own family over the years, the cast-offs and undesirables. Why didn't Michael tell me about all of you? He was protecting us, Isabel explains. And you. He knew that knowledge of our existence would make you a target. But now that he's gone, we want to help. We've all read about his death, about the will situation. The family's local lawyer contacted me yesterday. Apparently, Richard is trying to find leverage against you. I think about the documents hidden in my safe, about Grace Whitmore's letter condemning her son's choices. They're afraid of what I know. They should be, Isabel says firmly. But they don't know what we know, what Michael discovered in his research. She pulls out a thick folder from her bag. The Whitmore fortune wasn't built on medical innovation or smart investments. It was built on theft. The documents she spreads across my kitchen table are damning. Patent applications stolen from immigrant doctors in the 1940s. Research data falsified to discredit competitors. A systematic pattern of destroying careers and stealing ideas, all hidden beneath layers of legal protection and social influence. Dr. Huang, Isabel points to one file, created a revolutionary cardiac repair technique in 1947. The Whitmores had him deported on fabricated charges, then patented his work themselves. Dr. Morrison developed a pediatric surgical instrument in 1962. They bought his debt, forced him into bankruptcy, acquired his patents for pennies. Page after page of brilliant minds destroyed, innovations stolen, lives ruined, and at the center of it all, the Whitmore medical dynasty built on others' genius. This is what Michael found, I whisper, part of it. He spent months tracking down descendants of these doctors, offering compensation, trying to make amends. He couldn't undo the past, but he was trying to atone for it. I think of the foundation Michael established, the patents he'd put in my name. Was he trying to return what had been stolen in his own way? There's more, Isabel continues. The current generation, Richard and Patricia, they're planning something. My sources tell me they're not just contesting the will. They're trying to have you declared incompetent, claiming grief has affected your medical judgment. They want to invalidate any decisions you've made since Michael's death. My blood runs cold. They can't do that. I'm a surgeon. My record is impeccable. They have influence at your hospital. Board members who owe them favors. Doctors who trained under Richard and still fear him. Isabel's expression is grave. They're building a case that you manipulated Michael while he was dying, that his genetic condition affected his mental capacity. They want to paint you as a gold digger who took advantage of a sick man. The audacity takes my breath away. After everything, after their own son protected me from beyond the grave, they're still trying to destroy me. What do I do? Isabel smiles, and it's not a pleasant expression. You fight back, but not alone. Michael knew this day would come. He prepared for it. She hands me a business card. Alexandra Chen, my daughter. She's a partner at Chen, Morrison & Associates in New York. Corporate law with a specialty in medical intellectual property. She's expecting your call. Another card. Dr. James Morrison, grandson of the doctor whose patents the Whitmores stole. He's chief of surgery at Columbia. He's willing to review your surgical record and testify to your competence. Card after card, a network of allies I never knew existed. All connected by their shared experience of Whitmore cruelty, all ready to stand with me. Why? I ask. Why help me? You don't know me. Because Michael asked us to, Isabel says, simply. And because it's time. For 70 years, the Whitmores have operated without consequences. They've destroyed families, stolen legacies, ruined lives. You're not just fighting for yourself, Sarah. You're fighting for all of us. The weight of this settles on my shoulders. I came back from Michael's treehouse thinking I held all the cards. that I could negotiate peace with his family. Now I realize the war is bigger than I imagined. My phone rings. Jonathan Miller. Sarah, we have a problem. The Whitmores just filed an emergency injunction. They're claiming mental incapacity and asking for immediate control of Michael's assets. The hearing is tomorrow morning. I look at Isabel, who nods grimly. She'd expected this. I'll be there, I tell Jonathan, and I won't be alone. The rest of the day passes in a blur of phone calls and strategy sessions. Alexandra Chen flies in from New York, bringing a team of associates. Dr. Morrison arranges for testimonials from my colleagues at the hospital. Other members of the Shadow Whitmores, as they call themselves, emerge from various corners of the country. Thomas Whitmore, Patricia's exiled brother, is a distinguished professor at Berkeley. He provides documentation of similar tactics the family used against him decades ago. Rebecca Goldstein, née Whitmore, offers financial records showing how the family had hidden assets in offshore accounts to avoid taxes and legal judgments. By evening, my small colonial house has become a war room. Legal documents cover every surface. Laptops hum with research. The dining room table hosts a strategy session that would rival any corporate boardroom. They're using Judge Garrison, Alexandra announces, looking up from her laptop. Old Yale connection to Richard, golf buddies. This won't be impartial. Then we file for recusal, suggests one of her associates. Conflict of interest. Not enough time, Thomas Whitmore interjects, but Garrison has his own secrets. Back in '85, he was involved in a cover-up of patient deaths at Greenwich Hospital. My mother has documents. The room falls silent. We all understand the implication. We'd be fighting fire with fire, secrets with secrets. No, I say firmly. We don't become them. We win with truth, not blackmail. Alexandra smiles approvingly. Spoken like the woman Michael described. All right, we play it straight, but we play to win. That night, as the team continues preparing, Isabel and I sit on my back porch, looking out at the bare trees silhouetted against the winter sky. She's told me more about Michael's visits to her in Vancouver, how he'd wanted to understand the family patterns to break the cycle. He talked about you constantly, she says. How you worked with children at the hospital, how you'd stay up all night with sick patients, how you treated everyone, janitors to department heads, with equal respect. He said you reminded him of what the Whitmores could have been if they'd chosen compassion over control. I wish I'd known about all this while he was alive, I murmur. I could have helped him carry this burden. You did help, Isabel assures me. You showed him it was possible to choose differently. You gave him the courage to document everything, to prepare for this day. He knew they'd come after you. He made sure you wouldn't face them alone. The next morning, I dress carefully in my best suit, the one I wear for important surgeries and medical conferences. Alexandra insisted on meeting at the courthouse steps for a final strategy session. As my car approaches the building, I see them. Not just the legal team, but dozens of people I've never met. Who are all these people? I ask Alexandra. The families, she replies. Descendants of doctors the Whitmores destroyed, former employees who were wrongfully terminated, patients who were denied care because they couldn't afford the Whitmore rates. They can't all testify, but they wanted to be here, to bear witness. I recognize some faces from the documents Isabel showed me. Children and grandchildren of brilliant minds whose innovations were stolen. They nod as I pass, offering silent support. Inside the courtroom, the Whitmores are already seated. Richard looks confident, Patricia composed, Christine slightly uncertain. Their lawyers, a team from Hartford's most prestigious firm, flank them like guards. But when they see my entourage file in, their confidence wavers. The Shadow Whitmores. Take seats directly behind me. Isabel, elegant and dignified. Thomas, wearing his Berkeley professorial air like armor. Alexandra, radiating competence and controlled fury. Judge Garrison enters, and I can immediately see why the Whitmores chose him. He greets Richard with familiarity, barely acknowledges our side. This will be an uphill battle. Your Honor, the Whitmore lawyer begins. We're here on an urgent matter regarding the mental capacity of Sarah Whitmore and the validity of recent documents allegedly created by the deceased, Michael Whitmore. For the next hour, they paint a picture of me as a manipulative opportunist who isolated Michael from his loving family, convinced him to create false documents while he was mentally compromised by his genetic condition, and now refuses to accept the rightful family inheritance. They present affidavits from society friends claiming I was never accepted in their circles, that Michael seemed different after our marriage. They show financial records suggesting I influenced him to move assets. They even have a psychiatric expert who, without ever meeting me, testifies about the psychological profile of a grief-stricken gold digger. It's character assassination, delivered with legal precision. When our turn comes, Alexandra rises with quiet authority. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that this entire proceeding is not about protecting Michael Whitmore's legacy, but about suppressing evidence of systematic fraud perpetrated by the Whitmore family over 7 decades. The judge's eyebrows rise. That's a serious allegation, counselor. Indeed it is, Alexandra agrees. She begins methodically presenting our case. Michael's medical records showing complete mental clarity until his death. Testimonials from colleagues attesting to my professional competence and ethical standards. Documentation of the foundation Michael established before our marriage, showing his long-standing commitment to charitable work. But it's when she introduces the historical documents that the room's atmosphere shifts. These papers, Your Honor, document a pattern of theft, fraud, and deliberate destruction of careers, spanning from 1942 to the present. The Whitmore medical patents, the foundation of their fortune, were systematically stolen from immigrant doctors and researchers who were then discredited, deported, or driven to bankruptcy. Richard jumps to his feet. Objection! This is irrelevant to the matter at hand. On the contrary, Alexandra responds smoothly. It establishes pattern and practice. The Whitmores have a documented history of using legal proceedings to silence opposition and steal intellectual property. Today's proceeding is simply the latest example. She continues presenting evidence. Patent applications with forged signatures. Immigration documents showing deportation proceedings initiated by Whitmore lawyers. Medical board investigations that mysteriously ended when doctors agreed to sell their patents for token amounts. Dr. Huang's cardiac repair technique, now known as the Whitmore method, generates $2 million annually in royalties, Alexandra states. Dr. Morrison's pediatric instruments, branded as Whitmore Innovations, have netted over $50 million in sales. Dr. Petrov's surgical protocols, still taught as the Whitmore protocols, are used in hospitals worldwide. With each revelation, the Whitmores sink lower in their seats. The judge, despite his friendship with Richard, looks increasingly uncomfortable. Furthermore, Alexandra continues. We have evidence that Richard Whitmore knew about his son's genetic condition for years, but chose to hide it to protect the family's reputation. This directly contradicts their claim that they're acting in Michael's best interests. She presents Grace Whitmore's letter to her son, the one condemning the family's practices. Then she plays a recording, legally obtained, of Richard attempting to bribe Jonathan Miller. The courtroom is silent as Richard's voice fills the space. Name your price. Destroy whatever documents you have. Convince that woman to sign away her claims. The Whitmore name must be protected. Judge Garrison clears his throat. Mr. Whitmore, do you deny this is your voice? Richard's lawyer whispers urgently in his ear. Finally, Richard speaks. I was distraught. My son had just died. I may have said things in grief that revealed your true intentions, Alexandra finishes. Your Honor, this isn't about mental capacity or protecting Michael Whitmore's legacy. This is about a family desperate to hide decades of criminal behavior. The judge calls for a recess. As people file out, I catch Patricia's eye. She looks stricken, as if seeing her life's work crumble in real time. Christine won't meet my gaze at all. During the break, more supporters arrive. Some I recognize from the hospital, colleagues who've witnessed my work, patients' families, who want to speak for my character. Others are strangers united by their shared experience of Whitmore cruelty. When we reconvene, Judge Garrison's demeanor has changed. I've reviewed the evidence presented. While the historical allegations are disturbing, they're not directly relevant to the question of Mrs. Whitmore's current mental capacity. My heart sinks, but he continues. However, the evidence clearly shows that Dr. Sarah Whitmore is of sound mind, that Dr. Michael Whitmore was mentally competent when he created his will and related documents, and that the attempts to challenge these documents appear to be motivated by factors other than genuine concern for the deceased's wishes. He looks directly at Richard. I'm dismissing this petition. Furthermore, I'm recommending that the State Attorney General investigate the allegations of historical fraud presented today. While this court cannot adjudicate crimes from decades past, we cannot ignore evidence of potential ongoing criminal enterprise. The gavel falls with finality. The Whitmore's lawyer immediately objects, calls for appeal, demands a new hearing. But the damage is done. The masks have fallen, and the truth is spreading like wildfire through the courtroom and beyond. Outside, reporters who got wind of the proceedings swarm the courthouse steps. Richard and Patricia flee through a side door, but not before I see the defeat in their eyes. Not just legal defeat, the defeat of people whose carefully constructed world has collapsed. That evening, my house fills with celebration, but it's subdued. We've won a battle, but the war isn't over. The Whitmores still have resources, influence, connections. They'll regroup, find new strategies. What happens now? I ask Alexandra. The Attorney General's investigation will take months, maybe years, she replies. The Whitmores will hire the best defense money can buy. Some of the older crimes are beyond statute of limitations, but the pattern is established. The truth is out. Isabel adds, more importantly, the families who were wronged now have hope. We're already getting calls from others who suffered under the Whitmores. Nurses fired for speaking up about patient care. Researchers whose work was suppressed. The network is growing. As the evening winds down, I find myself alone with Michael's letter again, the one Isabel brought me. His words take on new meaning now. Together, you're stronger than the Whitmores realize. He didn't just leave me financial security. He connected me to a community of survivors, gave me an army of allies, provided weapons of truth against an empire of lies. The next morning brings predictable headlines. Whitmore medical dynasty faces fraud allegations, and prominent family accused of decades-long pattern of theft. My phone rings incessantly, reporters wanting comments, colleagues expressing support, strangers sharing their own Whitmore stories. But one call stands out. David Whitmore. Sarah, I've been watching the news. I want to help. We meet at a small cafe near the hospital. David looks exhausted, torn between family loyalty and moral conviction. I knew something was wrong, he admits. Growing up in that house, feeling the weight of secrets. Michael tried to tell me once, but I wasn't ready to hear it. He slides a flash drive across the table. Mother's personal files, correspondence going back 30 years, records she thought were private. I'm not proud of taking them, but after yesterday, the truth needs to come out. Why are you doing this? David meets my eyes. Because Michael was the only one who ever really saw me. When I chose art over law, when the family threatened to disown me, He supported me. He said following your truth was more important than following their rules. He pauses. And because someone needs to stop this. If we don't end it now, it'll continue for another generation. Christine's children will grow up in the same poisoned environment. The cycle has to break. That afternoon, I meet with Thomas Brennan at the hospital. He's been fielding calls from medical journals wanting to investigate the patent theft allegations. The medical community is shaken, he tells me. The Whitmore name has been synonymous with innovation for decades. To learn it was built on theft. Institutions are already reviewing their relationships with Whitmore-funded programs. Michael's work was legitimate, I insist. His innovations were real, his research genuine. Of course, Thomas agrees. Michael was brilliant in his own. Right. That's what makes this tragedy even deeper. He didn't need stolen legacy. He could have built his own reputation honestly. Over the next week, the investigation expands. The Attorney General subpoenas decades of Whitmore financial records. The medical board opens inquiries into the patent attributions. Immigration Services reviews the deportation cases from the 1940s and 50s. I continue my surgical schedule, finding refuge in the operating room where life and death are clearer than legal machinations. But even here, the Whitmore influence lingers. Some board members avoid me, worried about associating with controversy. Others offer quiet support, sharing their own suspicions about the family's practices. One evening, as I'm leaving the hospital, I find Christine waiting by my car. "I need to talk to you," she says, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. We sit in my car, awkward silence filling the space. Finally, she speaks. "I found something in Dad's study." After the hearing, I started looking through old files, trying to understand what you were accusing us of. She hands me a leather journal, aged and worn. It's grandfather's, from the 1940s. His personal notes about the acquisitions, as he called them. I open the journal carefully. The pages are filled with meticulous handwriting, documenting each theft like a businessman recording transactions. Names, dates, amounts paid, methods used to discredit or remove the original inventors. It's a confession written without remorse, a criminal's autobiography disguised as a business diary. "He was proud of it," Christine whispers, "proud of destroying those people. Called them necessary casualties in building an empire." "Why are you showing me this?" She struggles with the words. "Because I have children, twin boys, 5 years old, and I look at them and wonder, what am I teaching them? What legacy am I passing on? I don't want them to grow up like I did, believing that crushing others is just good business. It's the most vulnerable I've ever seen her. What will you do?" "I don't know," she admits. "Stand with my parents and perpetuate this? Or stand with you and destroy my children's inheritance?" "Maybe there's a third option," I suggest. "Maybe the real inheritance isn't money or reputation. Maybe it's the chance to choose differently." She looks at me with something like hope. "Is that what Michael believed?" "It's what he lived," I reply. "Every day he chose to heal rather than harm, to build rather than tear down. That's the real Whitmore legacy. Not what was stolen, but what can be given freely." Christine nods slowly. "Keep the journal. Use it however you need to. I'm not brave enough to testify against my parents, but I won't stand with them either. And maybe someday I'll find the courage Michael had." As she leaves, I realize the true scope of Michael's final gift. Not just financial security or legal protection, but the seeds of transformation planted within his own family. David creating art that heals. Christine questioning the values she inherited. Even Patricia and Richard forced to confront the consequences of their choices. 2 weeks after the hearing, I receive an unexpected visitor. Grace Whitmore, not the deceased matriarch, but her namesake, Richard's elderly aunt who lives in seclusion in Maine. She's 93, sharp as a blade, and carries herself with quiet dignity. "I've been watching the news," she says, settling into my living room with surprising grace. It's time I spoke up. I knew my sister-in-law well, the first Grace. We corresponded for years. She produces a box of letters, yellowed with age. Grace knew what the family was becoming. She tried to stop it, but she was one woman against a machine. These letters, they tell the real story. Her plans for reform, her attempts to make amends, her hope that someday someone would have the courage to expose the truth. I spend hours reading Grace's letters, seeing the family history through the eyes of someone who loved the Whitmores, but hated what they were becoming. Her words echo across decades. Power without conscience is poison. Wealth without wisdom is waste. Legacy without love is loss. She'd be proud of Michael, the elderly Grace says, and of you. Finally, someone is doing what she couldn't. As she prepares to leave, she takes my hand. The family will survive this, you know. Changed, perhaps diminished, but they'll adapt. The question is whether they'll learn, whether they'll choose to become what Grace always hoped they could be, healers instead of harmers. That night, I dream of Michael. We're in the Vermont farmhouse he bought, the one I've never seen. He's showing me around, pointing out where the kitchen will be, where we'll put the Christmas tree, where our children will take their first steps. It's so vivid I can smell the pine trees, feel the worn wooden floors beneath my feet. "I'm sorry?" he says in the dream. "Sorry I left you with this mess." "No," I tell him. "You left me with the truth, and the truth is never a mess. It's a foundation for something better." When I wake, I know what I need to do. The next day, I call Alexandra. I want to propose something to the Whitmores. Not a war, but a reckoning. A chance for real redemption. We spend days crafting my proposal. Using the foundation Michael established as a base, we outline a comprehensive restitution program. The Whitmores would fund research grants named after the doctors they wronged. They'd establish a medical innovation incubator focused on supporting immigrant researchers. They'd create a scholarship program for medical students from underrepresented backgrounds. It's ambitious, Alexandra notes. Expensive. They might prefer to fight. Then we use everything, I reply. The journal, Grace's letters, David's files. But first, we offer them a choice. Destruction or transformation. The same choice Michael made. We arrange to meet at a neutral location, Jonathan Miller's office. The Whitmores arrive with their lawyers, faces grim. I come with Alexandra and Isabel, carrying boxes of evidence but hoping not to use them. "We're here to negotiate," Richard begins stiffly. "No," I correct him. "We're here to offer you a path forward. A way to honor Michael's memory and repair decades of damage." I slide the proposal across the table. As they read, I watch their faces change. Surprise, calculation, something that might be relief. "This would cost hundreds of millions," Patricia says finally. "Less than what you've earned from stolen patents," Isabel points out. "And far less than what you'll lose if this goes to trial." Richard looks at me directly. "Why? Why offer this instead of destroying us completely?" "Because Michael believed in redemption," I answer. "Because your grandchildren deserve better than inheriting shame. Because healing is more powerful than revenge." The room falls silent. Finally, Christine speaks. "I think we should do it." Her parents turn to her in surprise. She straightens, finding courage. "Michael's gone. We can't change that. But we can choose what happens next. We can choose to be the family he always hoped we'd become." It takes 3 hours of negotiation, but eventually we reach an agreement. The Whitmores will fund the restitution program. They'll cooperate with investigations. They'll acknowledge the historical wrongs without admitting legal culpability. In exchange, I agree not to pursue further legal action, not to release the most damaging documents publicly, and to work with them in implementing the programs. As we sign the agreements, Patricia approaches me. I know you don't believe me, but I did love Michael. Just not the way he needed. I believe you, I tell her, surprising myself with my sincerity. Love isn't always enough. Sometimes we have to choose to act on it correctly. The weeks that follow bring a whirlwind of activity. Press conferences announcing the restitution programs, meetings with families of wronged doctors, planning sessions for the research incubator. The Whitmores, to their credit, don't just write checks. They participate, facing the people their family hurt, listening to stories they've long ignored. I divide my time between surgery and foundation work, implementing Michael's vision on a scale he never imagined possible. The Vermont property becomes the first site for the new research center, built in partnership with the immigrant advocacy groups. David Whitmore surprises everyone by becoming deeply involved, using his art connections to fundraise, creating installations that tell the stories of silenced innovators. Christine joins the foundation board, bringing organizational skills honed by years of running charity events. Even Richard and Patricia, despite their initial reluctance, find roles. Richard uses his medical connections to bring prestigious institutions into the restitution program. Patricia transforms her social network into a fundraising powerhouse. For the scholarships, it's not perfect. Old habits die hard, and there are moments of tension, regression, conflict. But slowly, painfully, something new is being built from the ruins of the old Whitmore Empire. 1 year after Michael's death, we hold the first Whitmore Chen Innovation Symposium, named to honor both the family's potential for good and Isabel's husband's legacy. Researchers from around the world present their work, with special recognition for immigrant scientists and doctors. I deliver the keynote address, standing before a packed auditorium that includes the extended Whitmore family, both the traditional and shadow branches now united, medical professionals, researchers, and families affected by the historical injustices. A year ago, my husband died believing in the possibility of change, I begin. He left more than a will or financial assets. He left a challenge to transform a legacy of taking into a legacy of giving, to turn institutional harm into institutional healing. I look out at the audience, seeing Patricia and Richard in the front row, aged by the year's revelations but present nonetheless. Christine beside them with her twin boys. David with his latest art piece, a sculpture made from old medical instruments, transformed into something beautiful. Isabel and her family, finally acknowledged. The Shadow Whitmores, no longer in shadows. The work isn't finished, I continue. Healing takes generations, but every research grant funded, every student scholarship awarded, every innovation shared freely rather than hoarded selfishly, is a step toward the future Michael envisioned. After the speech, people approach with stories, gratitude, plans for collaboration. The network Michael began has grown beyond what either of us imagined. That evening, I stand alone in my office at the hospital, looking at Michael's photograph, on my desk. Beside it sits the locket he left me, the Vermont property deed, and a new item, the first patent filed through our innovation incubator, credited properly to Dr. Amara Osei, a brilliant Ghanaian researcher whose work might revolutionize pediatric cardiac surgery. We did it. I whisper to Michael's image. Not the way we planned, but maybe the way it needed to happen. Through my window, I can see the lights of Hartford stretching into the distance. Somewhere among them, the Whitmores are learning to be a different kind of family. Somewhere, researchers are working late on innovations that will save lives. Somewhere, children who might have died are alive because of cardiac techniques Michael developed honestly, Brilliantly, compassionately. The intercom buzzes. "Dr. Whitmore, your patient is prepped for surgery." I put on my surgical cap, touch Michael's photo once more, and head to the OR. There's work to do, lives to save, futures to protect, a legacy to build one careful stitch at a time. As I scrub in, I think about the letter hidden in the treehouse, about Grace Whitmore's buried dreams, about secrets revealed and truths finally told. Michael thought he was leaving me protection against his family's worst impulses. Instead, he left me the tools to awaken their best ones. The OR doors swing open. My team is ready. The tiny heart on the monitor beats steadily, waiting for healing hands. "Let's begin," I say, stepping into the bright lights. And we do, beginning not just another surgery, but another day of building the world Michael believed possible. A world where innovation serves humanity, where wealth enables justice, where family extends beyond blood to include all those united by shared purpose. The Whitmore name will survive, transformed from a symbol of privilege and exploitation into a beacon of restitution and hope. Not because the past can be erased, but because the future can be written differently. In the end, that's the greatest inheritance of all, not money or property or social standing, but the chance to choose who we become. Michael chose love. I chose truth. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, the Whitmores are choosing redemption. The surgery proceeds flawlessly. Another life saved, another future secured. Outside the OR windows, dawn breaks over Connecticut, painting the sky in shades of promise. This isn't the ending of our story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one written in acts of healing, measured in lives transformed, dedicated to the radical proposition that even the deepest wrongs can be made right if we have the courage to try. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.